Black holes hiding behind walls of gas, a small town that got rained on by mysterious blobs from the sky, and deep under Antarctic ice, methane is leaking out of the seafloor for reasons nobody can fully explain. These are more real events that scientists still can't explain. In the early days of the universe, about 1 billion years after the Big Bang, James Webb spotted something unexpected: tiny glowing crimson pinpricks. Astronomers simply called them little red dots. Based on their light, these dots seem to be small galaxies packed with an impossible number of stars, so many that they shouldn't have been able to form that quickly, but there was an alternative theory. Those red glows might not be stars at all, but rather gas falling into massive black holes. To figure it out, researchers pointed the Chandra X-ray Observatory at them. The logic was, if these were massive black holes, they should be blasting out high-energy X-rays, but when the data came back, Chandra saw nothing. There were no X-rays detected from most of these dots. This created a massive contradiction. They are galaxies. They contain way too many stars for their age. If they're black holes, they are X-ray faint, which goes against almost everything we know about how black holes behave when they're eating. One idea is that these black holes might be buried under such thick clouds of gas and dust that even the X-rays are being smothered before they can reach our telescopes, but we still don't have a definitive answer. Deep under Antarctica's Ross Sea, methane gas is escaping from the ocean floor. This shouldn't really be happening, at least not yet. See, for a long time, we've known that huge amounts of methane are trapped under the Antarctic ice, but the assumption was that the freezing temperatures and pressure kept it stable. Then in 2011, a group of divers came across an active leak. It was the first time anyone had seen the gas bubbling up from the seafloor in this region. The mystery isn't just that it's leaking though, it's that the leak is happening in a part of the ocean that hasn't really warmed up much. So scientists can't just chalk this up to rising temperatures. Deep sea microbes also typically migrate to these leaks and eat the methane before it can reach the atmosphere, but when researchers returned to the site, they found that the microbes were incredibly slow to respond. It took 5 years for a tiny colony to form. Even then, they weren't consuming enough of the gas to stop it from escaping. We don't know why the methane started moving on its own or why the microbes are failing to keep up. For decades, people working at high-security nuclear sites have been seeing things in the sky. More than just strange lights, too. I mean accounts of solid metallic discs or cigar-shaped objects hovering right over missile silos. The most famous case happened at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Witnesses there described a glowing red orb hanging around the front gate. While that was happening, 10 different nuclear missiles went completely offline at the same time. The weird part is that when technicians went to fix them, they couldn't find a single mechanical issue. The missiles just turned off and then eventually came back on. And this hasn't just happened once. Similar reports have come out of Minnow Air Force Base and sites in the UK. On radar, these objects have been clocked moving at thousands of miles per hour and pulling these impossibly sharp turns. What are these things? Why are they so interested in nuclear technology? There are plenty of theories, none have been proven, and if there is a definitive answer, it hasn't been made public. For a long time, the rulebook for life on Earth was pretty simple. You need sunlight to make oxygen. Plants, algae, and certain bacteria soak up the sun and pump out the air we breathe. But in July 2024, a team of researchers realized that rule doesn't apply to the deep ocean. While studying the seafloor over 13,000 feet down in the Pacific, they found that oxygen levels were actually increasing in total darkness. There is zero sunlight at that depth, so photosynthesis is impossible. The culprits behind this are these small rocks called polymetallic nodules. They look like pieces of coal, but they're packed with metals like cobalt, nickel, and manganese. And when researchers tested them, they found these rocks were carrying an electric charge. The voltage is high enough to trigger a process that splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. This is a pretty incredible discovery. It means that oxygen can be produced purely by geology without any help from living organisms or the sun. It really challenges the entire timeline of how we think of life beginning, because it means that oxygen-breathing creatures could have evolved long before the first plants ever showed up. There's a massive structure in deep space that is currently breaking our understanding of how the universe is put together. It's called the Giant Arc, a string of galaxies that stretches over 3 billion light years across. To put that in perspective, it would take about 20 of our own Milky Way galaxies lined up end to end just to cover the width of this thing. The reason this is such a headache for astronomers is because of something called cosmological principle. This is a fundamental rule of physics, which states that when you look at the universe on a large enough scale, everything should look more or less the same. Matter should be spread out relatively evenly, but this thing is basically a giant clump. It's like looking at a calm ocean, then suddenly seeing a single wave that's just 5 miles high for some reason. Scientists aren't really sure why. In 2024, scientists in India published their findings on a prehistoric monster that makes modern anacondas look like garden snakes. They found the remains of Vasuki indicus, a snake that lived about 47 million years ago. Based on the size of its vertebrae, they estimated this thing could reach up to 50 feet in length. Finding a giant fossil is cool, but the mystery here is actually about the weather. Snakes are cold-blooded, which means their body temperature and size are directly limited by how warm their environment is. For a snake to grow to 50 feet, it needs a constant extreme level of heat. The problem is that our current climate models for that time period don't show the Earth being especially hot. If this snake existed, it means the global temperatures 47 million years ago were a lot hotter than what we've been telling people for decades. It could mean that our understanding of the Earth's past climate is missing a huge piece of the puzzle. We're either wrong about how snakes grow, or we're very wrong about how hot the planet used to be. Imagine you're reading a history book that goes from the year 500 right up to 1500, but when you turn the page, the next chapter suddenly starts in the year 2024. A huge chunk of the story gone. That is exactly what's happening in the Earth's crust, a phenomenon called the Great Unconformity. In rock formations all over the world, including the Grand Canyon, there's a point where 500-million-year-old rock sits directly on top of rock that is over 1 billion years old. That means roughly 500 million to 1 billion years of geological history just isn't there. It's not just missing in one spot either. The gap appears on almost every continent. Geologists have been debating for years where all that rock went. One theory is that during a period called Snowball Earth, massive glaciers acted like giant sandpaper, grinding away miles of the Earth's crust and washing it in the oceans. But that theory doesn't explain everything, because some of the missing rock seems to have vanished at different times in different places, so we can't blame it all on a single global freeze. Pretty strange. In 2019, the Chinese Yutu-2 rover was exploring a crater on the far side of the moon when it spotted something odd. In the middle of the dry lunar soil, there was a patch of material that looked almost gel-like. In a place as dry and desolate as the moon, seeing something that looks wet or slimy is not what you're expecting. Scientists spent over a year analyzing the data before they finally released an official explanation. They concluded that the gel was actually a type of glass. The idea is that a meteor hit the moon, the intense heat melted the soil into a dark, shiny green glass. This has happened before, but the specific color and consistency of this patch didn't quite match the samples brought back by the Apollo missions. Even with the glass explanation too, there's still a bit of debate. The way the material was clumped together and how it reflected light was kinda unusual, and some researchers think it might involve a specific mineral composition we haven't fully documented on the far side of the moon yet. In August of 1994, people in Oakville, Washington woke up to a very bizarre and rather revolting scene. Instead of rain, tiny gelatinous blobs were falling from the sky. And it was bad enough that goo was dropping down on people's heads, but then people started getting sick. There were reports of severe flu-like symptoms, respiratory issues, and intense dizziness that lasted for weeks. One woman even took a sample of the substance to a lab at the Washington State Department of Ecology. A microbiologist there looked at it under a microscope and found that the blobs contained 2 types of bacteria, one of which is found in the human digestive system. Over the years, theories have gone everywhere. Some people suspected the military had been carrying out some kind of testing. Others thought the blobs might be pulverized jellyfish waste that had been sucked up into the clouds by offshore military bombing practice and then rained back down. Another theory is that they were star jelly. We talked about star jelly in part 2 of this series. The biggest problem with solving the case, though, is that the original samples eventually vanished from the labs. So without the physical evidence, scientists can't really confirm anything. It's especially odd, though, that people were getting sick in this case. That wasn't really a thing in most standard star jelly cases. About 10 years ago, astronomers spotted a star in the Cygnus constellation doing something unexpected. It's officially called KIC 8462852, but everyone just calls it Tabby's star. Usually when a star flickers, it's because a planet is passing in front of it, which might block maybe 1% of the light, but Tabby's star was suddenly dropping by 22%. That isn't a planet, that's something something way more massive. Researchers have spent the last decade throwing every theory they have at this thing. They thought maybe it was a giant swarm of comets, but you'd need thousands of them all hitting the same spot at the same time, which is statistically not very likely. They looked at dust clouds too, but the way the light changed didn't match the signature of space dust at all. And it gets even weirder though. The star isn't just flickering, it's actually fading away. When scientists look back at old photos from the late 1800s, they realize the star is about 14% dimmer now than it was a century ago. There is no known reason for a stable, middle-aged star to just slowly lose its shine like that. Because none of the natural explanations really seem to work, the star became the center of this huge alien megastructure debate. Some astronomers are still seriously considering the idea that there is some kind of massive project built to harvest the star's energy. Most scientists are still holding out for a natural answer, of course, but so far, no one's been able to make the math work for the flickering and the fading at the same time. So at this point, we still can't say for sure. And that's been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.